The movie begins with a tight-faced Gerard, who is in charge of the high-end restaurant, Le Bédou Bleu. He is interviewing the young, zealous and aspiring chef, Agnes, for a job opening. Gerard's style of interviewing her comes with quite an intensity which almost catches Agnes off guard. But her boldness and ability to talk her way through such situations gives her the advantage, and this lands her a job. Agnes, having thought she just got hired as waiting staff, can't hide her disappointment and displeasure when Gerard hands her a toilet brush. He wants her as a cleaner at the restaurant. Agnes is however eager to impress and fulfill her words that she loves every aspect of the restaurant business. She also aims to prove that she can offer a perfect service by doing her cleaning duties in the most diligent of ways. In no distant time, she is promoted to the post of waiting staff, taking and delivering orders. At this point in her life, everything seems to be fine, as she has a job she likes and is also having the time of her life with Tobias, her rockstar boyfriend. The restaurant kitchen is busy and every staff member is dutiful. Gerard, in his usual stone-cold demeanor, tells Agnes a particular table must be handled as top priority. On that table is Lola the food critic who, to the surprise of Agnes, turns out to be a man. Gerard, in trying to impress Lola, demands Agnes unhooks a few buttons and throws away her nun look. Still in their bid to impress, he gives Agnes a bottle of the expensive wine Chateau Ladder to simply take past Lola and make sure Lola sees it. While on the plan to impress, tragedy strikes. Agnes, in reflex, throws her hand a bit, and it hits Gerard. The vintage Chateau Ladder finds its way out of Gerard's hands to the floor. Gerard, in trying to save the bottle, makes solid contact with fire. Agnes tries to quell the fire, but the fire extinguisher is faulty. She then tries to seek other means. Sadly, the whole tragedy spills outside the kitchen and into the restaurant, where guests are having a good time. This includes Lola, the food critic. Agnes's fate is now glaring at her. Losing the job she highly coveted, she finds Tobias. That doesn't end well, as Tobias already moved on from her to another lady. Losing someone that was supposed to support causes her to break down. Agnes' friend, Lusson, gives her reasons as to why the breakup was good, stating Tobias was a parasite anyway. Agnes continues crying. Lusson takes her for a girls' night out, and tries to suggest men for her. But the night out ends with Agnes getting drunk. Struggling to enter her apartment, she mistakes her neighbor David's apartment for hers. David, seeing Agnes's drunk state, assists her to her apartment and puts her to sleep. Agnes finds her way to her fun and loving parents, whom she fails to visit as often as they would like her to. The hug from her parents brightens her countenance. Agnes's mom, Maud, teaches her the perfect way to make her signature dish, fish surprise. It's one dish that the mastery of its making eludes Agnes. Agnes's dad, Sven, gets excited, showing Agnes the interesting things happening in their lives she might have missed out on. Agnes's phone rings, and the caller sounds mysterious. They ask Agnes to meet them up at the Night Orchid the following day. Agnes, in the company of Lusson, is at the Night Orchid. Lusson comes quite prepared for any eventuality. She believes in her tin of pepper spray. The mysterious caller shows up, to Agnes' surprise. It's Cal, Agnes's former co-worker at the Le Bédou Bleu, who resigned, to the furiousness of Gerard. He takes Agnes and Lusson to where he thinks is the perfect location for his new restaurant. The place is nowhere near ready, dusty, and looking more like a warehouse. An upset Pernilla, Cal's wife, is moving things across the place as part of the effort to make the place usable. Cal's reason for asking to meet Agnes is in motion. To Agnes's amazement, he's requesting a partnership, both in human resources and finances. The next scene shows Sven and Maud's serene garden, satiated with plants of diverse species. The garden also has their highly talked about and frequently harvested lemon tree. Maud and Agnes are fixing a plant in its vase when Maud, without consulting Sven, reveals she and Sven will give up their trip to Italy. The money they've been saving for trip will instead go towards to financing Agnes's partnership with Cal. They both concur that no bank would give her a loan to fulfill her part of the partnership, hence Maud's willingness to offer her the loan. This means her parents are forfeiting their trip for the time being. Agnes thinks of its impossibility and her unpreparedness for something of this magnitude. Maud reveals they would do anything for her, and there is no better time for her to take this up than now. Lusson and Agnes are seated, watching Tobias perform on the television. Lusson is irritated, as she didn't think Agnes deserved to be treated the way she was, especially after all the support he got from her. This becomes the needed push for Agnes. She meets Cal and signs every necessary document, as she's now keen on the partnership. To Agnes's surprise, Maud informs Agnes everything stays between them for now, as she's still patterning the finest of ways to make the reveal to Sven. In no distant time, the restaurant is taking shape. Furniture comes in, the kitchen is set up, utensils are aligned properly. They make assorted dishes in preparation. Cal introduces Paolo, the new chef. Final touches are put in place to have the restaurant jump-started. They devise means to popularize their new venture. Cal mentions they need people, preferably blogs and food critics like Lola, to write about their restaurant. Agnes mentions the popular Lola resides in her building as David Kummel, her neighbor, and states casually she's been in his apartment. Agnes remonstrates the idea, and with a smile assures Cal the restaurant has all it takes to be a hit. The big day comes. The opening of the restaurant. Everyone who made it there enjoys themselves. The success of the big day is evident as they end the night celebrating in the club. Lussan is particularly excited and tipsy. She appreciates Paolo's gorgeousness and points Agnes to it, meaning to bring Agnes out of her singleness. Paolo's response, however, is stiff. Lussan leaves once she sees Paolo and Agnes more at ease with each other. One thing leads to another and Paolo finds himself in bed with Agnes. The scene reveals unease as Agnes can't bring herself to have sex with Paolo. She feels greatly like she is cheating. But how can that be? She picks herself up and shows herself out of Paolo's apartment. Getting back home, she meets with David, her neighbor, setting out for his morning workout. They both exchange awkward pleasantries. Work resumes. Everyone is fired up, and expectations are high. Agnes is ready to deliver her best to guests, and Cal is eager too. On this day, time passes seamlessly without any sign of guests. As the time ticks by, every ounce of hope in them is drained by each hour the doors are kept locked. As they hope against hope, the doors open. Sadly, the supposed guest only wants to use their parking space. Disappointment stares at them again. Agnes tells Cal something must be done, and in her wisdom, takes a disguised thank you dish to David. To his bewilderment, they agree to have the dish and coffee back at Agnes's apartment. Agnes goes through an emergency cleanup before David can make his way up. Unfortunately, Tobias chooses this time to show up. He reveals he is checking on Agnes, who gets excited and mistakes it for a comeback. David knocks on Agnes's door, and Agnes loses her sense of reasoning. She tells David something happened beyond her control. Agnes, for the rest of the evening, wallows in delusion. Tobias lays bare-chested on Agnes's bed, and Agnes takes it as her cue to position herself by his side. Agnes's delusion becomes bare, and Tobias resents the idea in Agnes's head. It isn't a relationship comeback. Lussan scolds Agnes for letting Tobias back in, to the detriment of a much-needed meeting, although casual, with David. Agnes resolves to fix it. Pre-planned, Agnes wants to run into David while he takes his jogs. The idea is to wait in the bushes ahead and pop out seemingly out of nowhere, with an aura of it being a coincidence. It doesn't go as planned, and Agnes's foot gets stuck among twigs. David moves to assist, but in the process accidentally gets kicked by Agnes. It's so bad, he gets a bruised eye. He has to go to a hospital and get new contact lens. A little medication is also administered. Back at their building, Agnes finds it wise to apologize and fix things up. She slyly offers David the chance to eat at their restaurant. The idea is to make him feel he stumbled upon a new restaurant he can give his unbiased opinion about, without realizing she's a co-owner. The meds, however, won't permit him a coherent mind to agree to the offer. Another chance avails for Agnes to redeem herself. She invites David over for supper. David is treated to a nice fish surprise Agnes got from her mom's. David savors while he eats, and conversations about experiences make the evening a remarkable one. Agnes, at the restaurant, finds out Pernilla has karate engagements for the day. The same day she and David will be visiting the restaurant as some sort of date. Eager to keep the pretense, Agnes seeks for a waitress in preparation for David's visit. The onus falls on Lassan, who brags about her waiting prowess. However, the last time she waited was 7 years ago, a period that orchestrated her amity with Agnes. Her terrible performance on the night worries Agnes and bemuses David. To Agnes's satisfaction, David appreciates the meal. The evening continues, and David reveals the lady he was emailing from a dating site is no longer in the picture. Agnes immediately feels uncomfortable. Her dishonesty pricks her, even as she learns David is an honest man. Excusing herself from the table, she goes into the kitchen to reveal to Cal and Lussan her intention of coming out plain. David has the right to know she's a co-owner of the restaurant. She's, however, reminded of everything at stake. The dinner ends perfectly, and David mentions he would consider visiting again. Agnes and David don't end the night at dinner. They share a lot while taking a walk in the park. The lights illuminate the surroundings perfectly, and the breeze is mild, definitely aiding their connection and making their conversation heartfelt. David seems very relaxed, and opens up about funny instances he's never shared with anyone. What should have set the tone for the emergence of a good amount of feelings ends abruptly when Sven calls. Maud has been hospitalized, but is rather concerned about the restaurant. Agnes encourages that all will be well, and her mother will get to go on her trip soon. Agnes, back at the restaurant the next day, goes about her duty grumpily. She is confronted with the urge to fix the mess and make the restaurant work. Maud's faith needs repayment. The necessity of the trip for her mom constantly stares at her. The resolve becomes plain: get the restaurant working. She reckons time isn't in her favor any longer. She resorts to standing at the front of the restaurant, beckoning to passersby to try out the restaurant. She has resolved to becoming a human flyer. From afar, she sights David striding towards her direction. Envisaging his intention is visiting the restaurant again, she goes inside. Having not acknowledged her role to David as a partner in the restaurant, she hides herself in the kitchen. Agnes, finding succor in the fact that David came on his own, feels only a little bit relieved. Cal advises she stay out of sight for the time being, and let the food do the work. Agnes, fulfilling her role as a child to Maud and Sven, spends time with Maud when she's not working. One evening, Agnes walks Maud through a pictorial documentation of the restaurant, lightening up Maud's countenance. Not too long, Sven arrives with the doctor at Maud's hospital ward. Sven, out of the excitement, shares the announcement on behalf of the doctor. Maud's case isn't critical, as previously thought. Joy echoes across the room, Sven and Agnes sinking into the arms of Maud. The relief they feel is more than a sparkle of hope. After all, life has full meaning again. Agnes and Cal go into retrospect as regards the restaurant. The loss becomes heavy and constant, as Cal mentions. They concur something has to be done, else the restaurant will head for doom. Concurrently, Lassen is offering Paolo a drink, potentially setting the tone for something a bit intimate. The sound of a guitar can be heard outside the restaurant, accompanied with singing. The singer, Tobias, choruses the name Agnes, which draws the attention of the young chef out. As always, Agnes gives a meek smile as she meets Tobias outside. The crux of the song is Tobias asking Agnes to go out with him to a sponsor's dinner. Agnes, who has no willpower with matters concerning Tobias, succumbs without delay. Dinner time. Tobias and Agnes are seated with Tobias's sponsors. She mentions she has her restaurant and is asked about the food. She is not fully satisfied, as she feels a little more could have been done to better the flavor. Gerard, the tight-faced, funny-looking mustached chef, comes to the table. Having heard of Agnes's partnership with Cal, Gerard inquires teasingly about how packed their restaurant is every night. This gets to Agnes. Tobias, looking out for Agnes in his own way, sends Gerard on an errand. Agnes is then irritatingly greeted by Gerard's presence when she goes to the restroom. Agnes, in the face of intimidation from Gerard, stands her ground. She boldly tells Gerard the probable problem is him losing taste, because he stayed too long in the business. This opposes Gerard's stance on him staying for long in the game, something he prides himself on. She goes on to offer Gerard a note of correction concerning the dish she ate, and walks back to the dining table. All this boldness is to Gerard's astonishment. Walking majestically to take her seat at the table, she's met with a demoralizing scene. Another lady has taken over her seat at the table. Tobias is barely disturbed as he confesses he double-booked. She's just standing there like someone struck by lightning, and Tobias finds the perfect resolve. She's done with her meal, implying she's done with her table, and should most likely leave. The walk of shame out of the restaurant and back to her apartment is a long and slow one. David is seemingly waiting for her, as he rushes out the moment Agnes passes his apartment door. Having not seen Agnes for a long time, he was worried. David, inquiring how Agnes has been, is met with an outburst of tears. Tobias had been terrible to her, but David gives her the comfort and listening ears she deserves. David reckons guitar guys are the root of all evil. This would be a blend of his inability to play any musical instrument and the fun way of making Agnes feel light about the situation. David helps Agnes uncover the reality that Tobias has to become history for her. People's observation of her being used by Tobias is glaring to her now. Agnes starts the purging by taking out the painting that reminds her of Tobias. David finds joy in assisting Agnes in this great purge. Everything seems perfect for them in the twinkle of an eye, and a loud silence ensues. David quells the urge for them to kiss and hugs Agnes instead. A moment that was meant to be their first kiss turns to their first real hug. Facing each other on Agnes's bed, time seems to have stood still for them. Agnes feels the need for them to get some sleep, but as much as she does need it, that would be ruining a perfect night. David opts to sing a lullaby for Agnes, but they both find out being quiet is more soothing than David's melody. It is morning, and there is joy in Agnes's heart after how the night ended. She waves at David from her window while making breakfast for two. Lassen picks the wrong moment to enter Agnes's apartment with a newspaper in hand. Lola's review of the restaurant has been published. Lola opined that the restaurant has no personality. Agnes tries to see the better part of the review, that supposes the food is high quality. Lola states he isn't impressed with how the dining area was set up, and the fact that prices were ridiculously high. Lassen's service on the evening he visited the restaurant still holds significance, as he mentions the waitress was truly ignorant, but the only genuine note. Lassen doesn't care so much about the review, but for her friend. Unaware of David's presence, who enters gently, she speaks as the friend of Agnes that she is. She holds that everything was unfair to Agnes, seeing that getting a good review made her bond with David. The awkward look from Agnes gives David's presence away. Lassen, not knowing how to navigate this moment of truth, steps out. Agnes inquires if the review was what he thoroughly thought, and the heart-wrenched David affirms. He values honesty greatly and advises Agnes to consider being honest at some point in her life. David doesn't entertain her explanation. Her plea falls on deaf ears as he walks out on the summer Agnes. Back at Sven and Maud's apartment, Maud reveals to Agnes how dearly she misses being in the kitchen. The sound of a knife cutting through vegetables was music to her ears. Agnes, now living with her own realization of the restaurant edging close to being a failed project, worries about her father still in the dark about the loan. Maud sees the frustration in her daughter and encourages her. Not long after, Maud loses composure and balance and slumps. Agnes calls her dad, who calls for an ambulance. They don't find a pulse. Agnes weeps uncontrollably as she calls on her dad to do something. It turns out to be a hapless situation. Maud is passed on. Maud is soon laid to rest. The emotional Agnes cries her eyes out as tributes pour in. Sven reads from Maud's personal journal and ends his poignant tribute with the poem by Birger S. Jober. The poem highlights interestingly how Italy grows love and lemons with grace and patience. This, to a large extent, emboldens what Maud stood for. Sven and Agnes grieve the passing away of Maud. They sit at the porch of the house. Light cuts through the leaves, debris of scattered leaves litter around the compound moving with gentle breeze. Sven mentions he will do Maud the honors and make the trip to Italy all by himself. He opines it is what Maud would want. Agnes, knowing her father's wish already has no headway, is saddled with the hefty responsibility of letting the cat out of the bag. Sven is in shock. Tearfully, Agnes offers consolation. By the reason of his money being in the business, he owns part. Agnes, determined to put a smile on her father's face, seeks ways to get her dad's money back. The business isn't thriving, and Cal reveals all the money invested is gone. But there is a way out, Gerard's offer. Cal explains they'd lose their investment, but wouldn't have to file for bankruptcy. The restaurant gets into the shape Gerard wants. Significant changes are being carried out. While contemplating how to make his new acquisition, he has a mild clash of ego with Agnes, who stalls signing the offer papers. Sven enters the pale-looking restaurant, at some point, to meet Agnes and hand over Maud's journal to her. Maud would have wanted her to have it. It is a familiar scene yet again. Tobias is egotistically seated facing Agnes, who keeps a straight face. There seems a difference this time, as opposed to her different meetings with Tobias after the breakup. She quarrels with Tobias on why he failed to show up at Maud's funeral, even after personally sending an invite. Tobias, in his usual manner, gives excuses, citing an important rehearsal. In a bid to cheer Agnes up, he reveals the gift he bought, a recording of Ulf Lundell. The verity that Tobias didn't know she despises Ulf all the while infuriates Agnes. Tobias argues no one can hate Ulf, a genius. Agnes, fed up with Tobias's show of ignorance, frantically takes the big Ulf painting and sends it through her window. It hits the floor and its glass shatters. The painting is gone, out of her life. Same goes for Tobias. Soaking in the emotions that comes with everything happening around her, the sight of her mom's journal gives her a glimmer of hope. Agnes dashes to the restaurant with Maud's journal in her hands. She realizes all the mistakes made that were detrimental to the restaurant. She shares them with Cal, Pernilla, Lusson, and Paolo. She shares that they refrain from competing with other restaurants and make the place more people-friendly. She hands over Maud's journal titled Love and Lemon to Cal as the blueprint. Cal and Pernilla seem impressed, but suppose the timing isn't in their favor. Bankruptcy is staring them in the face. Their home will be gone in 2 weeks. This bothers Cal, but Pernilla buys into Agnes's new vision on behalf of herself and Cal. The atmosphere shifts to positivity. Everyone is ready to put in the work, and Maud's journal becomes their manual. They take time to study the recipes in it. Sven sells his house. The idea of spending the rest of his life alone in the house he and Maud lived in frightens him. He opts instead to spend his time helping Agnes setting up the restaurant. Agnes, determined to right her wrong, knocks on David's door. David greets her warmly. Agnes invites David over to the restaurant, but he declines and states his inability to review a place twice. Agnes corrects the notion. She wants David as a guest. She apologizes for their previous misunderstanding. At the night of the rebirth of the restaurant, Agnes summons everyone and gives a pep talk. She is appreciative of their willingness to see the restaurant get back to its feet, and their sacrifice of working without paychecks. The meeting takes a different turn when Cal becomes nauseous. He runs out, looking for a place to puke. Agnes hopes it isn't widespread. Her hope shatters as Pernilla and Paolo join in the race, birthed by nauseousness. Something has to be done, as Cal, Pernilla, and Paolo are too incapacitated to carry on their duties. Agnes searches for a makeshift chef, but Lusson isn't having that. She thinks Agnes is capable of whatever she needed a makeshift chef for. Her motivating words hit Agnes like a meteor rock falling from the sky. It works. Agnes begins the night preparing dishes, and Lusson perfects her waiting skills. Sven rushes down offering to help, just as he did for Maud before her passing on. Guests arrive. In a jiffy, almost all the seats are occupied. David enters with Camilla, his friend from the dating site. Lusson rates Camilla's beauty for Agnes and scores her average. Agnes steps out to say hi to David, who introduces the two women. A familiar foe visits, Gerard. Gerard finds ways to taunt Agnes and further states a food critic, Red Scare, is inside the restaurant, to Agnes's fright. She makes sure to painstakingly prepare Red Scare's dish to avoid getting a bad review. Agnes reckons her interview has the power to get them back from the brink. Gerard sneakily moves around the kitchen, full of evil intentions. The opportunity shows itself, and he finds the beast getting cooked to meet Red Scare's order, proceeding to pee in it. This maddens Agnes, who picks a fight with Gerard and throws him out through the back door. David's concern for what is happening in the kitchen soon shoots up, and he decides to enter the kitchen. The panicking Agnes has no hope, as preparing another beast will take too much time. They can't keep Red Scare waiting. David advises Agnes to prepare fish surprise for Red Scare, as no one, not even her, can resist its good taste. Agnes agrees after doubting herself for a while. Sven takes up the responsibility to stall Red Scare. Red Scare stands to leave when Agnes blocks her with a plate of fish surprise and implores her to give it a try. After the first spoon, her smile is like dawn's first flight, radiant and captivating. Agnes, reveling in the scene of guests enjoying themselves and leaving happy, feels fulfilled. Camilla and David take a walk back. To David's joy, Camilla urges David to go tell Agnes exactly how he feels about her. David makes no hesitation. Running like someone fleeing from a ghost-infested environment, he meets Agnes and bares his heart. Both hearts get in sync, and they share their first kiss. This ends a perfect evening, and ushers in an era of happy days for Agnes.